Okay, class, welcome to VisCom. Hey, we are going to be doing a project where you make your own magazine cover and you put yourself on that magazine cover. Before we do it, though, we're going to do a sample one together in class where you're going to show me that you know how to do it before I cut you loose to go and do your own. We're all going to do the same one. We're all going to do this, make it look the same. The only couple differences will be on your picture is going to be on the sample one, and also your name will be on the sample one. I've given you access to the files via the assignment sheet. And so that's going to come right here. And if you click on this magazine project folder, you're going to see this picture of a magazine in there. And you're also going to see a couple of fonts. My next video will talk about the fonts that are on there. So take this thing, and if you right click on it, select download. We'll download that sample magazine cover. So that's there, kind of loaded up, waiting for us to go. And we're going to go ahead, and this time we're going to use Pixlr E, because I think Pixlr E gives us the most opportunity to do the things that we need to do on this document, because there's a few things we want to mess around with. So let's go to Pixlr E, and we're going to create new. And a good size document to use for this, why don't we just use that full HD, that 1920 by 1080. Okay, I'm going to go over here and I'll put in my name, and I'll just go like sample magazine. All right, I'll select create, and that'll put our document on the page for us. What I want to do first is I want to get that thing that I just downloaded and put it onto this document. So I'm going to go over here. You know, there's lots of ways to do this, but I'll do it this way here. I'll go plus. What type of layer do you want to add? I want to add an image layer. And then I want to go to my downloads, and I'll download that magazine cover right there. I'm going to press V on my keyboard. That gives me the move tool. And I'm going to resize this thing so that it fits into this document. And I'm going to kind of snap it to the corner there, and I'm going to snap it down as far as it'll go right there. So I've got I'm going to have this side for the one that I'm trying to copy, and then I'll do my copy on the other side of it. Okay. So when we're setting this document up, so we set it up on there, but we want to be able to recreate this. So I'm going to start at the very bottom layer of things that I see there. So when I look at this document, I see a gradient background. So you may have whatever one you try to do later on may have a photograph of some kind. It may have a color, or it may have a gradient. Okay, we're going to do this one as a gradient. That's probably the most challenging of them all, because you've never done your own custom gradients before. Then I see a bunch of text, from the text across the top right here that says so much good stuff inside, to the title of the magazine, to this big headline right there with the name, and then some other secondary things that are on there. You're not going to have to do all of those on this practice one, but when you go to do your actual one where you choose which one you're trying to replicate, you're going to want to make it look as close as you possibly can. Okay, so we've got that on there. And so if I was to, and then the photograph goes on top of that. So really it's background, text, and then picture. So I'm going to introduce this stuff in that same order. So we're just layering on there. You look at your picture and you decide which order you go in. And you don't have to do it in that order, because it's all done in layers anyways. And you can restack it and move it around if you wanted to. I'm just going to try to show you how I would probably do this workflow. Okay, so probably the first thing we want to do is we want to recreate the size of this thing so it's kind of perfect, and we'll put it off to the side and we'll fill it in with our background. Okay, so to do that, here's our first new tool that we're going to use. We're going to use something called the Marquee Selection tool, or the Marquee Select. All right, this is really similar to Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is, actually, before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer here. So I'll do a new empty layer, because this is where I'm going to put the background here. So I'm going to do this, and I'm going to select, go down. Sorry, I've got a red dot on there also. And so I'm just selecting everything that's there like that. I'm going to click on my V key, which is a move tool. And then I'm going to click and drag and move that thing over. Okay. And when I do that, it's going to give me a marquee selection that's exactly the same size as this one right here. Okay. So now this is where my magazine is going to go. I'm going to do the gradient background now. You can leave the marquee going. And with the marquee, you should see you've got these little things out here we call marching ants. And that just tells you what's selected. So if you have something selected on a layer, nothing will happen on that layer except for where you selected. For example, if I was to use the brush tool right now and paint with black, you can see that there, right? If I go like this, it just stops at that line because I have something selected. It will only affect what's selected. Okay, so when you have a marquee selection, only that area is selected. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to fill this thing with a gradient. So I'm going to go to my gradient tool, and then I get this contextual toolbar at the top that says, okay, here's the gradient, and it wants to know, do you want a linear gradient or a radial gradient? We want radial because you can tell it's a lighter color from about the middle going out to a darker color. It's faint, but it's really cool. The best gradients are ones that are really, really faint. I believe that. Okay, so how do I change the gradient to make it perfectly like this one? Here's what I do. I'm going to click on that gradient right there. And then and these are called stops. So this is a gradient bar, and these are the stops. So the first stop is where the center point is going to go from the middle to out, okay? So that first color that I want, I'm going to click on this color swatch, and that brings up the color picker. And now any place that I move my mouse, take a look at what it does. It finds that color of that pixel right there. So if I was to move it right there, it samples that little color. Well, I want the lightest color that I can in here. So I'm just going to go right here, and I'm going to click one time. When I do that, the color picker chooses. It's not quite white. It's close enough. If you made it white, nobody would know the difference. I'm going to click on OK. Then I'm going to click on this other stopper here, click on the color swatch. And now this time, my color picker, let's go down here where I'll go up top where it's pretty dark right there. So now my color picker is active again. And notice when I hover over certain areas, it changes color. If I get this little gold area, it changes color. There's that off-white. But here's what I'm looking for. I want this dark color up here in the corner. I'll click one time. It changes it to a brownish gray color. Click on OK. And now my gradient is ready to go. I'm going to click on this little gradient guy right here one more time. Go about to the center point of this document. Just eyeball it, it'll be fine. Click and drag to the corner and then release. And that will create the perfect gradient to match the gradient that's over here. Pretty slick, right? I still have my marquee selection on there. I don't want to have anything selected anymore. So if I go to the word select, I can say deselect. You see it also says Control D. So I can, if I don't want to use the select button up here, I can press Control D on my keyboard, and that selection went away. Okay. Now the last thing, I feel like this document's too big. I don't need all this space over here. So I'm going to do a quick crop on it. So I'm going to go to my crop tool right there. And I'm going to click and drag and move it over right to the edge of that. Let go, press return or enter on my keyboard. And now I've cropped that too. So I've got my sample. I've got my one that I'm on my template that I'm starting to build based off my sample. And when it's all said and done, I'm going to take my sample and I'm going to crop that out. So I'm left with just my one magazine cover. It's a great workflow though. Okay. So that's everything for this part. Part 2 is coming soon.